conversation today, my guest has been described as Mata Narmada. A frail woman with an iron will, she's embodied the crusade not only against the Narmada Dam, but what it embodies, a point of view, a struggle. I'm delighted to welcome Medha Patkar. You have been so overwhelmingly, visibly active in the Narmada campaign, but your agenda is really a much larger one than merely stopping or limiting the construction of a dam. What is this agenda? It's a large
Sardar Sarovar, since when the fight began, symbolizes to us the kind of development paradigm that is being followed in this and many other countries. Here there is a model of centralized use of natural resources, which belong really to the toiling masses, according to us, which is a social wealth, and that is being taken away from them for the consumerist lifestyle of a handful, a small percentage of our population. So we believe in the alternative to this kind of model, which really is based on decentralization, both of economy and polity, but also the right kind of, right choice of technology, which would not destroy the natural resources and which will really be participatory to the extent that it will have the people's participation in not just managing their resources, but also in deciding the equitable distribution.
But surely your worldview is up against a much larger interest that expresses itself in perhaps human greed. There's a simplified notion of Gandhiji saying that there's enough for everybody's need, but not greed. But you're up against human nature in some ways.
That's true. But I also don't rule out the place of conflict in this present society full of injustice. And that's why we believe that on one hand, we will have to really organize and mobilize the downtrodden, the tribals, the Dalits who are facing hell, the laborers, even the organized laborers, along with the unorganized, as in how they face the backlash of this kind of development model. And on the other hand, of course, appeal the larger society towards the values of self-reliance at every level, individual to nation state, which can come merely through simplicity and also belief in sustainability of development goals and practices.
But what gives you the hope that this development model is sustainable? We've seen that in country after country, that the alternative development model, while attractive intellectually and emotionally to the intelligentsia that engage in the decision-making process, ultimately has succumbed and yielded to the imperatives of global capitalism, shall we say?
We don't think it is the alternative that we are talking about, which is not to be really understood from the Gandhian ideals and strategies, is ever tried out with all sincerity and without any kinds of pressures and influences from the other quarters. Today, for example, the international economic pressures and influences which come through the World Bank, IMF, WTO, the kind of imperialist strategies that the G7 or G10 are following, are something that the politicians, the economic and political elites in this country are falling prey to. Now, the silent majority at the same time really has a different agenda and different priorities, which are ruled out or neglected altogether. Now, if therefore it has to be tried out, even if visualized as something which is practicable, one has to change the whole decision-making process and the polity. Without that, real try can never be given.
You, sort of legend has it, or belief has it, live with two saris and are able to go and engage in enormous personal sacrifice of the kind that isn't forthcoming in the community. Where do the impetus for the sacrifice that inevitably a larger social good involves, where is that going to come from? Are you despairing of this?
As I said, the backlash that is faced by a larger and larger section of population itself makes them think as to what is our goal and what is development for ourselves. Now, obviously, the landless, the laborers, the tribals, and the other socially disadvantaged groups really, face it much more than anyone else. But even the middle class, for example, if not the upper elite, is facing the kind of suffocation at many levels. And whether it is through the new kinds of sicknesses created out of tension and the kind of lifestyle.
Don't they seem to be sort of obsessed with acquisitiveness, the middle class?
It is there. At the same time, I think there is some kind of thinking going on. You see, what is this bua bhaji that is all around? People again turning to the organizational attempts like the Swadhyay Parivar, the philosophical movements for that matter. That also shows that there is a vacuum that is being felt simultaneously when there is so much crave for material development. So, but we are really not basing, our own agenda or the strategy on the strength of the dent that we may be able to make much more than we have already made. To some extent we have today or tomorrow. We are really basing our strategy and hope that is rooted in the downtrodden who are there in the whole world, who do not have even access to pure drinking water or electricity for that matter. Leave aside the high-fly communication development that is going on. So we really feel that they are the ones who will have to define the priorities and compel the politicians as well as the economists to change their own agendas. That can come through struggle and not without struggle.
Who do you mean?
I'm referring to the people's movements and people's organizations. There are a number of categories of those. But these are the people who view politics in a wider sense. For us, politics is setting the relationship between the power holders and the common people right. That should be just and equitable. And that should not leave a large majority powerless when the game, as it is happening on the political platforms within our country today, go on, when the others, all dukrams, really keep watching the sukrams. So we feel that ours is the strength coming from people's power. And we have varied range of mass base and mass strength with us. But more than that, even if it is a support organization and typical NGO, it represents the people's viewpoints as against the elites, which is generally reflected in the policies and plans.
You've talked about representing a point of view of the downtrodden. In terms of the democratic processes, are you willing to acknowledge that that is a point of view and that another point of view exists, even of that of the elites, which is legitimate in the sense that it is the point of view of people who participate in society? And what would be the interface between these two points of view?
It's the other way around, I mean, there is no real democracy today as we see it, as long as the other point of view is really dominating. And when, for example, 80% of our population do not think five-star hotels is a priority, those are coming up. There are thousands of cars on the streets, private ones, which are not required if the public transport, or at least not before the public transport is taken care of to satisfy the basic needs of the population. And everything for that matter, the whole budgeting that is at the cost of rural population and their resources, which are being depleted and exploited, leaving them in the hell, facing the plight of unemployment, a degradation of natural resources, compelling them to leave their social life pattern and come on the streets and in the shanty towns. I mean, it's their point of view which has no place in the present economy and polity, and that needs to be brought to the forefront. So if at all there is any concern to be shown for democracy, the ball lies in the court of the others, and this voice must be raised, and that can happen only through the alliance of amongst these populations who are facing what the Dalits faced in Bombay recently, or what the tribals are facing in every nook and corner of Bihar through the uranium mining to whatnot. But the basic unit where there are primary relations, the village community, for example, in India, must have the first right to resources and first right to plan. And their viewpoint really must be the first one to take cognizance of.
Looking at the Narmada debate, which has been so widely debated and written about, there are two substantially different views of development there. And I think that there is concern that because of your ability to sacrifice yourself, and you have been willing to put your life on the line for a cause that you believe in, where does this leave, once again, the other point of view?
It's again the best example, to explain what I was saying earlier, because as the process of the interstate water dispute resolution through an interstate tribunal went on for more than 10 years, from 69 to 79 almost, it was always one viewpoint that dominated that whole process. The tribals and the Pidgin communities, the population amounting to a few lakhs, not less than 10 lakhs, if you consider all categories of affected people due to one single dam of Sardar Sarovar, and leave aside the related dams, the Narmada Sagar, the storage dam, which again is going to uproot almost equal number of people due to the reservoir, canals, colonies, and so on. None of them was even once heard by the tribunal. So, as you say, these people who really dominate the decision making, whether it is in the case of Narmada or Tehri or Suvarnarekha, any big dam, or even the industrial complexes related decisions, or the decisions in favor of the liberalization, globalization policies of today, they all, including all political parties, unfortunately, are to be put in one basket. And then the others who are invariably made to face only the negative impacts. Many of them, lie in the so-called beneficiary areas to begin with. But then they also realize the small farmers, the marginal farmers, the landless in the so-called beneficiary areas, whether it is of the Sardar Sarovar Dam or otherwise for that matter. Or take the powerless people within Gujarat who belong to the Kutch and Saurashtra regions, the most drought affected and drought prone region, in whose name the dam is being built. Now, of course, it is temporarily stalled because of the Supreme Court orders. All of these are not heard, nor are they given the complete and full information. So, unfortunately, even those amongst the scientists or technocrats who make decisions related to dams, and also those belonging to the sanctioning authorities at various levels, take a decision without viewing the situation of the other side from a close angle, without making the due investigations, which are supposed to have been made as per law and the rules of our own land. And they do not even have knowledge of either the resources, the perspectives of them, the tribals, the Pidgins, on both sides, both lying in the catchment and the command. And then they presume number of things. And then for them the human problems is a very, very small one to be taken care of or accepted as a trade-off. The environmental problem for them is a problem created by someone sitting in the air-conditioned atmosphere. But to us, as we see it from a closer distance and becoming a part of the life of the people in the valley, and also look at the situation of the seriously drought affected people, both these sections who really form a majority compared to those who would actually benefit, the contractors, the politicians, the bureaucrats directly associated, or even the technocrats and a few other traders and others who may crop up. All of them really do not even know how rich is the resource base of the Narmada Valley in this case. They do not even know that the drought problem, the water crisis of the Kutch Saurashtra type of regions within Gujarat can be solved within a few years without Sardar Sarovar, which in reality submerges many other small scale projects which die of funds. So if the project is not proved to be economically and financially viable, if it is not proved to be ecologically beneficial or sustainable environmentally, not even socially justifiable, because the populations to be affected are really those in whose name the development is planned. So they should be the first amongst the beneficiaries, and here they are mere losers.
What is your bottom line on Narmada today? What would you like to see the government do at this point?
See, we have said that the dam must be stopped and stalled wherever it is.
And dismantled?
The Supreme Court has stayed it since January 95, May 95. Although the work stopped since January because Madhya Pradesh, one of the three states, took a position that no further construction would be possible at this time and a review of height would be necessary. But ours is not an agenda for review of height, for a simple reason that all the things that we are putting forth and have already put forth before the Supreme Court and the rest of the world make us believe that there are much better alternatives that can solve the problem at much cheaper cost within a shorter time and will benefit the right kind of people within Gujarat and outside.
Would you like to see the dam as is constructed now dismantled?
Oh, it can remain there as a beautiful monument that would remind us how the decision-making processes go wrong based merely on political expediency at the cost of the people who are compelled to sacrifice but are thrown into hells and so on. But if at all they want to use the structure that is built till date, they can of course lift the waters, as it was claimed by an ex-irrigation minister of Gujarat, Mr. Rupala, and put it in the canals which are already built. But provided the canals do not cause problem, today it's creating a havoc within Gujarat. You may not be knowing that canals has already started causing waterlogging, when it's only the rain-fed water that is filled in the canals, which is a very, very small amount. So imagine what would happen.
What is it that motivates someone like you? I think that we would like to believe that there aren't enough people like you to incur enormous personal sacrifice for a larger good, perhaps.
Oh, I think you are using that word again and again. I'm sorry, I should have clarified right at the beginning. I don't consider this as a sacrifice. First of all, there are a number of activists, hundreds of them in this country, fortunately. They are working in the most interior areas with the villagers, the downtrodden people in this country. There are so many in Maharashtra, Bihar, every state for that matter, both in urban and rural areas. And it's not a sacrifice at all. I'm just brought up on this kind of thinking and made to think since my childhood, because my parents have also been in the same field. My father is a trade unionist. My mother immediately since her retirement, and even before that she was voluntarily involved, but after having retired as a government servant, she is now working with a women's organization. So I'm brought up on the thinking that believes that one has to work with the people who really face any kind of injustice wherever they may be, and for a better world which would be peaceful, self-reliant, egalitarian and just. The sustainability and environmental issues came up to the fore as we saw that the sources of livelihood of the poor populations is what to the urban environmentalists mean environment, but that is again not the subject that is to be discussed at the international fora, but is to be fought for in the valleys and hills with the tribals and laborers.
How valuable has it been?
Natural thing.
How valuable has the academic discipline that you went through been for you? You know, you did a degree in development from the Tata Institute in Bombay.
It has been quite a help, I must say. Although I always believed that the theory of justice, which the Rawls propagated, or Marx to Parsons, whatever, makes sense and becomes meaningful only when you tries it out. And the rigidity, believing only one kind of ideology, always makes you lose the battle. We have seen the fall of Soviet Russia, and we are seeing what is happening to the even the socialists in this very country. So while the Marx has given us tools to analyze the society divided and into the class structure, we really feel that Gandhiji had lots to offer. And if you really talk of Gandhi and his view of not just the village communities and the Gram Swaraj, but also of the Harijans in his words, you cannot forget Ambedkar and Phule, Mahatma Phule. So, this kind of an complex bringing together of the ideologies coming from these great heroes and applying it to the present world, which is to be seen with open eyes, and the voices coming from the hills and valleys to be heard, is something which give you your own perspective. And that is what many of us belonging to the people's movements and being in the what we call as alternative politics really believe in.
You went through this academic process in Bombay, and you taught, and it seemed to be a fairly sort of classic, typical, sort of the NGO mold, the comfort of working with institutions and foreign aid and funding, and there's a whole world that operates in that realm. And what was the impetus that suddenly one day, I don't know if it was sudden, that you gave this up to go and work so much more intensely?
It was not one single event in my case. As I said, I could not have done anything else and anything else better than what I'm doing today. Since my childhood, I was taught to be with the poor and the most downtrodden. And I remember I always wanted to go into the interior and to those whom very few people, if at all, would dare reach out. And so I left everything to come, and it was so smooth. Of course, it's always an emotional commitment that I feel within myself. Like, for example, in the Narmada Valley, when I first came in August '85 and walked about 100 and more kilometers with a lawyer from Delhi who was thinking of legal action, I just felt for the people where I saw a dialogue between an official and them. I was asking them to leave their villages and go to the resettlement in Gujarat, and they were saying, no, you can shoot at us, but don't please compel us to leave our place and our land. And that kind of dialogue was really moving, and so I just wrote a song on the way back and immediately took a decision. So that kind of events
What were the words of the song? Do you remember a few of them?
It was in Marathi to begin with.
Can you sing it?
It was, Dharana ala ga dharana ala, ghara zamina ni gawa budala. A dam is coming, a dam is coming. The house, land and village will be submerging.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.